Ali toda parte você vê novamente o vídeo, trabalhando em carros, tentando sair desesperadas, claro, porque estão vendo a lama. Eu vou pedir até para repetir novamente.
And I think
but
people are going to
you don't see
respond.
that as socialism, right? I mean, in terms of the word, obviously, it's a word of significance.
Well, it is a society coming together to increase the standard of living of our seniors, and that is pretty much the definition, and the president's attacking it. Well, it is a society coming together to increase the standard of living of our seniors, and that is pretty much the definition, and the president's attacking it.
The brains behind Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Mr. Reagan.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not really the Congresswoman of New York's 14th Congressional District. She is essentially an actress. She's merely playing the part of a New York Congresswoman. I know this sounds crazy, but bear with me. In 2017, a group called the Justice Democrats held auditions for potential congressional candidates that they would run on their platform for various congressional seats throughout the country. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's brother Gabriel submitted her for the role. Now, I've auditioned for many acting roles in my day. I've also cast many of my own projects. I know how this works. If you find somebody with star power, even if they don't 100% fit the part, you go with it. Obviously, AOC has star power. Just look at her. She's a superstar, the most famous person in Congress, maybe ever. Their casting was perfect. Now, I didn't have to go digging for evidence for this, because they freely admit it. They brag about it.
Back in 2016, we put out a call for nominations. We got over 10,000 nominations. Out of those 10,000 nominations, we found Alexandria.
My brother told me that he had sent my nomination in the summer, but I was like literally working out of a restaurant, and I was like, there's no way.
A casting call. They had a casting call. They cast Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the role of Congresswoman. And they did this so they could promote their own agenda. In this video, I'm going to make 3 very serious accusations against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. 1, she did not actually run for Congress. 2, she is a puppet congresswoman. And 3, the people controlling her are very dangerous. Consider that the Green New Deal was drafted in 1 weekend by her staff. As far as I could find, she wasn't even in the room. Now, this is AOC's landmark legislation proposal. It essentially sums up her entire platform and lays out everything she wants to do in Congress. She didn't even participate in the drafting of the legislation.
What would be your message to young people that think socialism would be a good idea here in America?
Look yourself in the mirror of Venezuela and Cuba. You do not ever want anyone, not even close to socialism, to come to this country.
People are eating from trash bags in the street. So how has socialism actually helped the country? From the perspective of people who've lived through failed socialism, it's very hard to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't think any Venezuelan can really like socialism because we've seen it put in place very well.
It's not a game. It is not a game. It is not the route to go. It is not possible. It's not feasible. Don't fall for it.
It doesn't work the way the book says it works because we're humans and we have imperfections, and socialism is too perfect to be true.
Check your history, look at the news, look at all the countries that have failed under a socialist government, like Cuba, like Venezuela.
In Venezuela, socialism doesn't work.
We've seen what happens when socialism kind of takes to the extreme.
Bernie Sanders, as your enemy, do not ever get involved with this individual or any of the other socialists.
We also thought that this could never happen in our country. We had a balance of powers, we had democracy, and we elected our leaders.
People always talk about the Nazis and stuff like that, but nobody talks about the socialists and communism. It has killed probably more people than Nazis did.
It's this big lie to people who are disadvantaged, and it just actually makes them worse off.
It means a lot to me that this administration is doing something more than just sanctions and just words.
The people from Venezuela, we're very grateful with the United States, with this beautiful country, because they give you all the support right now in this critical situation.
Everyone's trying to paint it as if this is a U.S.-led thing, and it's for me, it's kind of an insult to the Venezuelan people who have been protesting for years. It's an insult to their agency.
I was born and raised in Venezuela. My parents are still in Venezuela. And I have seen the country basically just deteriorate.
In Venezuela, there's not food, medicine, education, nothing.
I left my home country 20 years ago because of this. And it's a gradual process over time. Little by little, power is taken away from the people.
Well, I was born in Venezuela and I had to leave my country. I had to leave my family. I've been here in the States for 5 or almost 6 years. I haven't seen my family in all of this time.
Being so far away, not being able to help your own family kind of hurts. And the other thing about it is that not a lot of people are speaking about it.
I left my country 10 years ago, not seeing my family, not seeing my friends, leaving everything behind and start again. So I want the kids right now to be able to have a future in my country, people that they have hope to come back to our country and reconstruct it.
This is a beautiful country. It's the best of the world. It's the most powerful. And we didn't get there just with socialism or anything close to that.
All right, what's up?
I just want to talk about some political issues.
Okay.
I think it's affecting the country, and I think it's talking about wars we're involved in. That's just what I have.
You live here in town?
Yes, I live here in town.
Okay. Do you have an ID on you or anything? 740-998-999. Drop the knife.
Turn the other way. Turn behind you. Put your hands behind your back.
I don't want 22 on the
Do you have any other weapons on you? Turn the other way. Turn the other way. Let me see your hand. I need to see your hand. Let me see your other hand. Can you see your other hand?
Yeah, I can see his other hand.
Keep your hand on top of you. Put them both on top of your head.
In 2002, there was a Nobel Prize in what is called economics, given to a psychologist, Daniel Kahneman. And he discovered that we have two thinking systems. A very fast one, which acts more or less stereotypically, just doing repetitive what we always do, essentially also working with, I would say, a behavior that is almost like genetic, like instinct.
Yes.
You know, for example, if you have no resilience, there comes something fearful, your instinct tells you, go to the group.
Right.
Find
so
shelter.
These are like cognitive shortcuts.
Yeah.
That mostly get the right answer quickly because you might have to make a decision quickly.
Exactly, but you are not thinking about it.
Right.
It's more like a reflex.
Right.
And but there's another system. It's called System 2, which requires energy and is real thinking.
Uh-huh.
And for this distinction, he got the Nobel Prize for this discovery, because in certain situations it's better to think.
Yeah. right.
And
like you're creating economic policy.
But the point is, the System 1 is always active.
Ah.
It's a default. That's how we work by default.
Uh-huh.
System 2 has to be activated by gut feeling. You have to have a gut feeling, an emotional sensation. You need to activate your thinking process.
Huh.
But the reason why it's not always active, the thinking process, is because it requires energy, mental energy.
Yes.
And it was unclear until recently what this mental energy is. And I'm just in the process, I've just submitted a paper where I show that these cells are the source of the mental energy.
See, that's interesting also because, you know, in evolutionary biology, the energy efficiency of the organism is strongly tied to its survival capabilities. Even though the human mind is an all-purpose computational system, it still requires a very high proportion of caloric energy in order to function compared to other animals that have simpler brains.
20% of our metabolic energy goes into the brain.
So if you're running your brain at 100% all the time,
Well, I think our brain is adapted to this 20% because it was always 20%.
Right.
And it was actually shown that it doesn't matter if you think or if you don't think, the mental energy that you use up is not much different.
Oh, the caloric energy is about the same?
Different. Actually, it was a mistake up to about 10 years ago that people thought the mental energy required for system 2 function, that means for thinking, is actually metabolic.
But it's not?
It's not.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I was thinking that too for a long time, but it was shown, and I show it in my paper, and I'll also show it in this book actually here, in the Indoctrinated Brain. It's something else. What you need to be able to put your thoughts, if you invest in thinking, every detail of your thought process needs to be stored. And only the autobiographical memory can do that. So, but if you're running out of index neurons, then the thinking process would start overriding previous experiences. And the brain tries to avoid that.
And then a person would say, it's just too hard to think that.
Yeah.
To go through that.
The technical term is ego depletion. And you might notice that. I notice it every day. I work hard mentally the whole day. I have a lot of System 2 activity during the day.
Yeah.
Writing a book is System 2. Exploring new scientific ideas is System 2.
Right.
Even social activities are System 2.
Right.
And after a few hours, well, my index neurons are used up. I feel that. And I start to be what we call ego depleted. And this ego depletion is my signal to go to bed and sleep. And while I'm sleeping...
Then during sleep,
the source, essentially the energy source, the number of new index neurons starts to grow. And their number is essentially my new energy that I have for the
next day. Wow.
And that's my theory, and I'm just hopefully being able to publish it.
That is really fascinating.
So here I put it already in there as if it were essentially a proven task, but it's the mental source to think.
Okay.
So if you shut down this, what I call here, this mental immune system, all these functions together are our mental immune system. So if you want to attack people and shut down their ability to resist what you want from them, you have to essentially only do one thing: shut down the production of these nerve cells. And this is
that's
the
interesting.
That's the target.
Let me translate this to pop culture.
Please.
And let me ask my producer. You remember in Star Wars they were trying to explain the Force, like how the Jedi has the Force, and I think in one of the later movies they came up with something. They introduced the concept of, I think they called them midi-chlorians. It was supposed to be some kind of substance that Jedi had that would give them Jedi powers. I think. Am I right? Oh, I can't hear my producer. I don't have my earpiece. I think they call it midi-chlorians.
Okay.
And it was, it was just a made-up substance that gave you Jedi powers. And if you lost your midi-chlorians, you couldn't be a Jedi anymore. But you're saying that the neurogenesis of these index neurons gives you sort of these
powers.
Yeah. I was almost wanting to call them superpowers because it is pretty impressive.
It's a superpower. It's the superpower which made us the dominating species on this planet.
Exactly.
Because we need our autobiographical memory, for example, to judge, to learn what other people want, how they behave, how we have to interact. We have to use we need System 2 to find out in a socially conflicting situation how to act best, not to be killed, maybe, So, all our social skills are based on this mental immune system.
What part?
Sorry?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just so curious. Oh, no, of course I am, but
it's fun.
What part of the brain does simulates the world? Because I'm good at this, doing physics simulations in the brain to consider, like, if I do this, these things are going to happen, or if this happens, this is going to happen. Surely there's like a simulation.
That's the hippocampus.
That's the hippocampus.
Yeah, because it's not only let's say, an image of the real space and time.
Yeah.
So the hippocampus ties all our memories, everything that we have experienced in the space-time continuum. Yeah, the four-dimensional space-time continuum essentially is represented by these index neurons.
Okay.
Yeah, the space and the time neurons.
Okay.
So it's space and time, and everything that happens in space and time. But even future events, things that we plan, are essentially memorized by new index neurons. These are virtual space and time neurons of future events. And when we try to execute this future event, if we try to follow a plan, then these future space and time neurons become more and more active because we are closer to the goal.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about when dreaming? Because when you're dreaming, your brain is creating a simulated environment, including other characters and their dialogue, and it is projecting onto them their thinking, even though they're not real, but even the physics of the world, everything, waterfalls, whatever. I mean, think about the complexity of how the brain has to generate this simulated world.
Yeah, and make it conscious.
And bring it into your consciousness.
Yeah, and even if we dream, it's there. It's actually quite interesting. We remember a dream when we wake up during a dream. Otherwise, we wouldn't remember.
So lucid dreaming.
Any dream. If you have a nightmare and you wake up, that's usually why dreams are usually not very happy dreams. Because the nightmare would maybe wake you up because it's not unbearable for you what you experience.
And you're saying in that moment it's still in your consciousness, and that's how you remember
it's still in your consciousness, but it's also that the hippocampus wakes up and the index neurons start to memorize the last part of the dream.
Okay.
That's why you always remember the end of the dream, but never the beginning.
Interesting. What about one time I woke up, this happened once in my life that I remember many years ago. I woke up and couldn't remember who I was. It's like all those neurons were frozen for a moment or something. Like I did not know my identity or anything for a few seconds. And it was a terrifying moment, by the way. And then everything came flooding back, all my memories of who I am.
It's almost like you boot a computer.
It's like a reboot, yeah.
It's like a reboot. I do this actually every morning. I mean, I'm doing it consciously meanwhile because I know how it works. And so it's essentially, I have to remember myself again. So if you think about it, the index neuron production is so essential for our mental health, mental immune system, our way to interact with others. You can really compare it. I mean, the name immune system might be interesting to explain. We have essentially two immune systems. We have one for microorganisms. That's our physical immune system, consisting of the multitude of our immune cells. And then we have, and it's against microorganisms. But in the macro world, it's not the microorganisms that actually bother us. It's usually macroorganisms. And as you can imagine, they come usually on two legs.
And they play mind games with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the only way to counter their attacks against us is essentially that we engage in thinking and be socially active. And it would go even a step further. It's not only the mental immune system of a single person, since personality and curiosity and individuality is every human being is almost like an immune cell in itself. So these cells in each human create individuality, and all the individuals together have essentially a social immune system against social attacks against society.
Well, no wonder thinking is under attack and individuality is under attack.
If you want to dominate a society, you have to attack the index neuron production in each individual.
Wow. Wow, so is that what, fluoride in the water supply? Is that one of the things that suppresses it, or what? I mean,
yeah, they actually inject stuff in the meanwhile that suppresses it, and I'll come to that in a second.
Okay, but I just want to make a note here that what you're talking about, which I think is really profound, is that the battle space of our world right now is cognitive.
Yeah, it's happening here. It's happening in the hippocampus.
In the hippocampus. That's where the warfare is taking place.
Is essentially the target of the war. This is where the war takes place.
Because, and this is why I would guess that we see, like in the wars that we're having right now, we're seeing around the world, the governments are no matter which side, are pushing out just propaganda and lies constantly. There's no real information, but it's all being pushed through controlled narratives and through media that's designed to say to you, don't think for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't question anything. You're not an authoritative source. Here are the authoritative sources. You should trust them and believe them no matter what, which means don't think for yourself.
Yeah. It's even worse, and come to that in a second.
Okay.
It's really even worse than that.
Okay.
And
Go
why
ahead.
this is happening? Why they need to check that only a certain amount of information, a certain level of information, is actually coming through.
Wow.
It's about installing essentially a new operating system in our brains, and this operating system shouldn't be interfered by either previous knowledge or by alternative views.
Okay.
So if you want to install if you want to modify the brain and you want to have people with a certain modified brain, then you need to control what goes into this brain.
Yes.
I think it's obvious.
And that's where it's narrative control and censorship of alternative views, and you can't question the science, etc.
Exactly. And we discussed already I mentioned already, this happened already years before. It started years before. If the psychological resilience is down, we have a high likelihood of developing a depression. It's not a depression per se, but we cannot cope with life events and so good. And if we don't cope with them well, then depression is more likely. So depression is essentially a clinical marker for a reduction or a blocked neurogenesis.
Huh.
So it's almost like in a reverse relationship.
Huh.
And it's causal.
This is why I never suffer from depression. I guess I just
you wouldn't.
I've been blessed with like really good neurogenesis or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, even if something really bad happens to you, I mean, there are things that could really put everybody maybe in a depression.
Yeah.
But it's more likely that you maybe come out of it somehow.
I would joke about it. What I would do.
No, I mean, many things happen in my life which I don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, a grandchild of mine was just born in the summer and lived only for 5 minutes. I mean, it was a really traumatic life event for the whole family. But I think we all had some kind of resilience still. We suffered, no question, but I think we all learned something out of it. We came stronger out of it as a family.
And that gets back to the resilience that you're talking about.
That's the resilience we need. And I show you actually why there's a compound out there, an essential compound, which actually was shown to help when you lose a family member to get over it better, not falling into depression more likely, when you just take this compound. And it's a natural essential compound. And come to that. I will remember, my autobiographical memory will remember when we come to that. But
okay.
I won't step
I want to know
ahead
about that compound. But I can't help but ask another quick question. Why is it that there are very high IQ people out there who are also extremely gullible?
Mm-hmm. So the IQ is essentially measured by the number of things you can juggle in your short-term memory at the same time. And this takes place, according to modern theory, in the frontal brain. And so we can have a high IQ even without a hippocampus. I mentioned already Henry Molassen.
Yes.
He did, without a hippocampus, he was IQ tested, and his IQ was 112 like before.
Interesting.
So he didn't lose any IQ. So IQ and System 2 thinking has nothing to do with it.
Interesting.
So even though maybe if you engage System 2 and start thinking, a high IQ will be helpful, no matter what. But it doesn't mean that you engage System 2 if you don't have it, or if you're not willing to do that.
Okay.
So thinking is possible, but not necessary for you to survive in our society. And most people with a high IQ maybe have maybe go to physics or whatever, study something. But then at a certain point in life, maybe their work becomes routine on a high level, of course.
Yes.
But it's not that they are curious about things, and they might have not the resilience they need to engage in real thinking, which might be controversial when it's necessary.
Got it.
Anyway, if you look at the growth of new nerve cells here and the growth of 1.5%, we should expect the growth of the hippocampus on our whole life.
Okay.
So that would be the curve here, which I show in this graphic. This is the hippocampus volume, actually the hippocampal volume of both hippocampi. When you are born, you have about 3 cubic centimeters, so 1.5. Then you have a steep growth rate during up to adulthood. And then you have a 1 to 2% growth rate the rest of your life. That would be natural.
Okay.
But if you look at gene bank data for, let's say, 20,000 Brits, British people, which was done in 2019, that's the growth rate. It's actually a shrinkage rate.
Wait, how was this determined?
They looked essentially at the hippocampal volume at every age.
Yeah.
And you see that at every age group, instead of having a bigger hippocampus with growing age, becoming smaller.
I mean, they're actually losing.
Yeah, we're losing 1.1
brain mass.
Instead of winning 1.5% of brain volume in the hippocampus,
yeah,
we lose about 1.4%.
And that was British citizens?
Yeah, but there are studies all over the world. It's just a very comprehensive study. That's why you use the data.
Is that why the British military, nothing works? The missiles don't launch and the propellers don't turn on the aircraft carriers?
I don't think we should maybe...
no, you can put that one on me. Yeah, that's my comment. That's me making a joke.
Yeah, okay. It's a funny joke, but to be perfectly honest, I think this is what we would see in every nation, because the reason for that is our lifestyle, and it doesn't differ too much from one country to the other.
Right, right. No, I would agree. In fact, I would almost hate to see that chart for Americans, because I live here, I see what's happening. There's a cognitive decline.
Deficits which cause hippocampal shrinkage, which are even more severe in Americans than, for example, in Germans.
Oh yeah.
For example, the omega-3 index.
The what?
The omega-3 index. It's the amount of omega-3 fatty acids required for hippocampal growth.
Oh.
And you can measure them in the blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm talking about omega-3, I'm not talking about what you find in canola, you know.
Right. No, you're saying like an omega-3 deficiency.
The omega-3 fatty acids, which I'm talking about, are the ones you find, for example, in fish.
Yes.
EPA and DHA. And these two can be measured.
Yes.
And the percentage in the cell membrane of erythrocytes compared to all other fatty acids is the index. Okay. And for example, the placenta in humans tries to produce about an index of 11% for the child that is growing in the womb. 11% is the ideal. With 11%, you have the highest hippocampal volume.
Oh, no kidding.
2% is not acceptable for life. It's not. You cannot live below 2%. Germans have allowed 4.5% on average. Not 11, 4.5. And Americans are actually by 4%. And
because we eat a lot of canola oil. I mean, not me, but I mean, the American people.
That's some of the problems that the industry tells us. Just eat canola oil, there's omega-3, because omega-3 is important. But the problem is humans cannot transform omega-3 from canola oil into DHA.
Oh, interesting.
It's impossible. Well, I mean, it's possible, but the percentage is below 1%.
Plus, we know the seed oils tend to be really inflammatory to the circulatory system as well, not just neurology. Yeah,
absolutely. No, okay. Anyway, just the consequences of
this is frightening. This chart.
The consequence of that is, of course, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. We have chronic exhaustion in society.
Yeah.
We have people are ego depleted already when they wake up in the morning.
Oh my!
Because the production is not going on overnight. You know. We have major depression as the #1 disease now in 2019, and Alzheimer's disease is now number 3 or number 4 worldwide as the cause of death. Yeah,
that's wild.
And Alzheimer's is a consequence of a decade long, of several decades of suppressed neurogenesis.
Okay,
that's why it's a disease of the higher age. Because it takes a few decades before the hippocampus is shrunken too much. Actually, the size of the hippocampus, the smaller it is, the closer you're to Alzheimer's.
Is that right?
Actually, the size of the hippocampus is a biomarker for the progression of Alzheimer's.
How many cubic centimeters is the hippocampus normally?
Yeah, it's about 5. You see here in the curve, it's about 10 cubic centimeters for both of them. So about 5 to 5.5.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Wow, such a small mass responsible for such a big...
Yeah, it's just a thumb essentially sticking here.
Right.
That's why you have to upload every evening. It's almost like this UPS stick, you know? USB stick, USB stick, where you can only memorize that you have uploaded something, but you cannot memorize the content that you uploaded without having a problem to memorize new things the next day.
Wow.
So the upload is very necessary. Now, This looks very esoteric, this chart here, but essentially it shows all the areas in our life that are responsible for the growth of the hippocampus.
Interesting.
Every area, we need a purpose in life. Without a purpose in life, we wouldn't memorize new things. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't explore new things. We wouldn't be waking up in the morning and doing something novel. We need something that pushes us, a purpose. And when you have a purpose in life, then you give food, essentially, memories to these new index neurons, and they survive. We need social life, social activity. And when you are socially engaged, even if you look in the eyes of your dog, it was measured that the oxytocin level goes up in your brain, but also in the dog's brain. Oxytocin is the most potent activator of neurogenesis that we know of.
Is that right?
That means if you shut down social interaction, you reduce the oxytocin level, and the hippocampus will shrink.
Isn't that the hormone between mother and child also?
Absolutely.
Among sheep and cattle and everything?
Oxytocin is the hormone that actually activates the birth process.
And so it spurs neurogenesis in the new offspring.
Yeah, it's very important, but it's particularly in humans. You have to think about it. The child that is born has no survival potential at all if the mother wouldn't care for it.
Right.
But the love of the mother to the child, the bonding requires memory.
Yes.
And the more the mother memorizes from these moments, the longer and more deeply is the bonding. And the stronger is the bonding. And that's why oxytocin is so important. It has this dual role. At one time, one function is to activate the birth process, the contraction of the uterus. At the other side, you have this activation of the memory center by producing more neurons that will make a lifelong bonding between the mother and the child.
And then this is experienced by the mother as love for the child.
Absolutely.
A strong desire to protect my child, even though
it's the same when you
don't rationally know why.
When you bond with when pairs come together, men, women, or whatever. Yeah. You know, nowadays it's more. Yeah, everything is possible. But the point is, if you meet people and you connect very closely, oxytocin is the bonding hormone, and every bonding relies on memory. I mean, you can't bond to anybody you can't remember.
Right.
Obviously.
I wish we could selectively, though, like forget certain people.
Yeah.
So no, but I'm
kind of an anti-bonding.
Another joke, but it's all. Even the traumatic memories are really critical for our formation of who we are and our experience.
Absolutely.
If we were to try to delete every bad thing that happened in our lives, we would probably make those same mistakes again.
Yeah.
And we would not be who we are.
Wouldn't be a good thing.